So I'm Heather Mills. Wasn't born here, should be speaking really posh, because my mum and dad had me in Aldershot. Parents were in the army. And then we got shifted up to here when I was 3 months, Washington Tyne and Weir down the road. My dad was a bit nuts, so he used to make us run from Washington to us with comprehensive to save the bus fare and then run back again. So I got into sport from a very young age. And then he made us do 200 lengths every morning. And then he made us work all night because he thought he was a reincarnation of Richard Wagner, the opera composer. And he managed to blag his way into becoming the chairman of the Theatre Royal in Newcastle and borrowed a lot of money and got some credit at Windows. So he ended up getting in a lot of debt. I went to the us with comprehensive, which they eventually knocked down years later. And went to school on the occasional day I wasn't playing truant. And I wasn't playing truant because I wanted to. I was working, helping my dad with his mad vision of doing an audiovisual presentation of The Ring of the Nibelung. So we were brought up on Wagner, which I hated, and I was put into Bayreuth every year to sit for 4 days through The Ring, and forced to play the oboe up to grade 8. So the second he went to prison for too much debt, which was announced at the school, I picked up the saxophone and just played to myself and under different names on albums behind the scenes for numerous reasons. I suppose what I am is a problem solver, and it's probably from a childhood full of injustice and madness. My mum left when I was 9. She ran off with one of the actors at the theatre that my dad was the chairman of, who was in Crossroads and went off to London. We didn't see her for 4 years. And when he went to prison, she eventually turned up and shifted us back down to London. So that's where the move came in. Didn't get on with her boyfriend, ran away from home when I was 14, lived on the streets in London for 6 months, stole my food, which you can't arrest me for now, because that shop's closed down, and basically learn to survive. And being brought up treading on eggshells, for any of you that come from abused childhoods, you learn to become a chameleon, to improvise, to problem solve, to think about how you're not going to get beaten that night, how you're not going to watch your sister get thrown through the window, what are you going to do? So I believe you are who you are when you're born. You're genetically who you are, because you see those awful kids at age 1 and they go, mine, and the others are going, would you like my toy? Would you like my toy? And they generally turn out to be the nightmare adults and the lovely adults. But there are situations in life where you have paths and you have choices. And I definitely, if I hadn't become a philanthropist, would have been a sort of head of a drug cartel or a narcos or something like that, because I'm an extremist. And luckily, I ended up going down the right road after I got arrested for stealing something and didn't really like the feeling of a cell overnight at the age of 15 that my mum left me in to teach me a lesson. And I started to think of ways that I could create businesses, having seen what my father had done, and not do it fraudulently, which is actually really difficult, but possible. So I was in the dentist, coming back up to Newcastle, waiting for my dad to come out of prison, and I saw these things called stick-on bras. Now, I had really big, annoying boobs, and I was an athlete that kept getting in the way. I thought, what a brilliant idea. You don't have to put a bra on, you just stick them on. So I thought, I'll set up a P.O. box and get some samples for free and start going around selling them, which I did, and they came in A, B, C, D, double D, and E cups. The problem was that they were really sticky, so when the women pulled them off, they started to complain that it was like a wax. So I'd say, 2-in-1, hairy nipples, all gone. What are you complaining about? So that was my first sort of import, and I grew that. I sold it into a successful business, but I wasn't old enough to have a proper bank account. So my mum would take the check, do PAYE only. And I really wanted to help her leave her mentally abusive partner, because what happens to a lot of people is they go out with a physically and mentally abusive partner, and then they meet only a mentally abusive, so they think they've gone up a rung on the ladder, and then they get stuck in that relationship. So I made this money, went to the hospital because she lost her leg at the same age as me, and they reattached it 25 years before, so when she was 25. So she was nearly 47, and I went to the hospital to see her, and had all these plans that she could leave him, and unfortunately she died in the hospital at age 47. It was at that point that I said, life could be over tomorrow. Yes, I've made a lot of money by a young age, but what am I going to do with it? What difference am I going to make? And what makes me excited and what makes me tick? And turning injustice around, which is why I'm very loved and very hated, because I fought Murdoch for 17 years and created the biggest settlement in history and put some of his journalists in prison as a lesson, but it took a long time. And basically, lost my leg in the hospital. Horrible psychologist comes in and says, you know you're not going to be attractive to men as you were before. And I looked at this woman, I thought, she's like 2 foot tall and 10 foot wide, and she's telling me with a leg missing that I'm not going to be attractive. So I just got her out, lying in the bed thinking, what am I going to do? I'd funded my brother and sister through university. They were reliant on me financially. And I had all the press outside the door. Model overcomes adversity. And so I thought, I could sell my life story to each one of them, do an exclusive, but different parts of it, and make some money. So I did. They weren't happy because they all thought they had an exclusive, but anyway. And then they kept chopping my leg off more and more because I'd crossed the street in London. There was a false alarm going to Princess Diana's house, and they said 3 times, she's going to die. And apparently one time I did die. So life is really fascinating, and the more extreme things happen to you, you either spiral or allow yourself to spiral, or don't have the capability to somehow pull yourself out. Or you get all these scars, physical and mental, and you say, right, I'm going to do this. So I was lying in hospital, and I was given this disgusting leg, and being a very vain person, I was like, that is gross. How am I going to put my high heels on that? And they said, you don't wear high heels with a prosthetic leg. You just wear trainers for the rest of your life. And I was like, no way. So I started to look into developing prosthetics, and because there was nothing available to do anything with, I started to think, well, hang on, Madame Tussauds, lifelike looking figures, looks fantastic. Why don't we wrap the legs in silicone that they put on burn victims? Why don't we put fake nails on the toes? Why don't we extend the heels, do them in different sizes, do maneuverable ones? So then I went to get my leg, and it was horrible. And I took it back, and they threw the leg away, and I said, well, hang on, aren't you going to recycle that? And they said, oh, no, we're not paid to dismantle, love. And I just thought, this is so bloody British in the mentality of just, and I looked at it, and there was no incentive for them to show they made money because they'd have their turnover reduced the following year rather than benefited for saving money. So I thought, I wonder how many people have spare arms and legs in the cupboard in the country. So I did an appeal on GMTV and said, can everyone send me their legs? I didn't think 20,000 legs would turn up at my door. So I had a bath full of legs. I had legs coming out of the sofa. I had them under the dining table in the kitchen. People would come around and think I was Hannibal Lecter. It was completely mad. And then, because the policeman had chopped my leg off accidentally, I thought, let's get the police involved. Try and lean on them a bit. So I met this great guy, and he helped me collect all these legs. And then I thought, how are we going to take them apart? And I thought, well, the prisoners cost the taxpayer a lot of money. Why don't we do 2 things? Incentivize them to do something that's going to make a change that might help, them when they come out of prison. So I went to Brixton Prison, and I said to the governor, can you take my legs apart? And he looked at me really weird. And I was like, no, these prosthetic legs. And we trained them all to dismantle them, put them into boxes, and then I got truck drivers on their holidays to take them down. So the bit that I missed out is that I went on holiday with my husband at the time's ex-wife and kids to learn to ski when I was 21, and I had 2 legs. And then the war broke out, And of course, I had friends that I'd developed there. Came back to England, tried to talk to the government, but they'd just come out of Iraq, so they had no interest because they couldn't rape anything, gas, oil, tanks, whatever from Yugoslavia. Didn't have anything that they could have. So they wouldn't listen, and the atrocities went on, and people were killed in front of us and blown up. And I came back to England, crossed the street, a police motorcycle came, chopped my leg off, crushed my pelvis, punctured my lung, and I ended up in the hospital. And my girlfriend came in, and she basically said, "You've got to become vegan." And I was like, what on earth is that? Being a Dewhurst 2 sausage and mash girl from Washington Town and Weir, I didn't know what that was. So I basically became vegan, healed myself, and started to develop limbs. So the limbs you see in the Paralympics, the running legs, the limbs you see now ice skating. But I had to fight to get those allowed. And they banned me 2 weeks before the Paralympics after 4 years of training because I'd developed a limb that they couldn't quite get their head around, where you could clip it straight into the ski, which gave you no advantage, but saved you from breaking your bones. Because when I became a ski racer at age 42, which is another long story and there's no time today, it was to prove that you can overcome adversity and do anything you want in your life if you put your head to it, and do it at age 42. So of course, when I asked to be on the British team, you can imagine age 42, they just thought she was completely nuts, and they said no. So I got a wild card, and I went over to New Zealand, did a race, trained behind the scenes on the ski slopes of Austria, and won a silver medal. And the woman who was the same age as me, who was the coach, who said there's no bloody way, she was standing there when I won it, and it was like, yes. So we all get that yes moment when we overcome something, when someone has told us it's not possible. You know, I had it at school all the time. You can't do this. So every time someone says to me, it's not possible, there is always a solution. Always, always, always. And I can't stand it when people say, they come in the factory and they go, well, the problem is, okay, can you just walk out and come back in again and say, I've been thinking about the situation and the solution is this, or this is a choice of solutions. Because the only way that you create meaningful change is to actually present a solution. And if you all spend your energy thinking about the solutions to all the problems of people outside of yourself, we would just change the whole world. Everybody's so stuck in their own head, so stuck in doing what they can for themselves. And actually, the most rewarding thing ever is to do things for others. So on the landmine situation, a field is really hard to fundraise for. Connect a person with a field, and you can change everything. So I was doing on and off exec stuff, producing for CNN before, behind the scenes. And I asked if they would match fund what we were doing. So United Nations Association partnered with us, and we went around and basically created a charity called Adopt a Minefield, where we said 100% of your money goes to the cause. Now, the public had never heard that at that time because they were so charitied out. They'd been having bad news from different charities of money disappearing and everything. And I said, we can match fund it with wealthy individuals that can pay the wages of the staff that have to be there full time. But let's make sure the public's money 100% goes to the cause. Let's minimize where there's wastes and costs. So I got a different prosthetist every week to go around the former Yugoslavia. And the way that I did that was it was just a week of their holidays time, and they loved it. Then I stuck them in a library van. I don't know if they still go on here, but when I was a kid in Washington, the van with the books would turn up. And I thought we could convert these into having bars so that people could practice walking with the prosthetics. And then we could take all of the limbs down to the former Yugoslavia that were dismantled by the prisoners and start fitting people up. Within 2.5 years, we fit 27,000 people. Then I joined with the United Nations Association, and we fitted up over 400,000 people now. And then we cleared 21 million square meters of minefield land. Now, it sounds really easy, but it was an absolute focus, and it takes a team of people, and you have to inspire those people to want to do it. But if you give them the solution and then just send them on the path of exactly what has to do, because it's all about being a team player, then you can achieve that. Then you can achieve, I now still hold the world record in speed skiing because I'm completely nuts. And I managed to get 4 gold medals in downhill and Super G in the World Championships because they wouldn't let me in the Paralympics. 2 weeks after the Russia Paralympics, they apologized because the press did their usual BS and said, we're really sorry, but can we have your leg design for the ski team now? So I was like, I could have sat and just gone, oh my God, but I just thought everything happens for a reason. If I hadn't lost my leg, I wouldn't have gone on and done those things. So when SHIT happens to you in life, just remind yourself it's going to turn into something positive if you make sure that it does. A friend of mine lost her son not long ago, 22 years old. She found him dead on the floor. Turns out he had sudden heart syndrome, SADS. So rather than her just be devastated forever, she's now set up this charity to unite with others to make sure that it becomes a standard heart test as it does as we get gynecological tests. It should be absolutely standard. So those nightmare scenarios in your life where you lose someone you love or you think your job's over, you're going to end up getting a better job. You're going to end up going down a better path if you stay positive and if you stay focused and if you think of what the solution is to your problem rather than think, poor me. You have to get your head out of that. After doing the speed skiing and everything else, I had really horrible press that most of you probably know. They destroyed all my charities. Nobody would donate, nobody would work with us. I used all my money, I mortgaged my house, I did everything I could. And I'd been growing a plant-based food company for 30 years now, so I had all these responsibilities. The fastest way to make money is to go and do one of those reality shows. Now, I wasn't willing to do I'm a celebrity, get me out here and eat loads of insects, because I'm vegan. But I was willing to do something that would inspire people with disabilities. So I did Dancing with the Stars, and despite what the press wrote, it all went to charity. And I was one of the only celebrities where it goes to charity, which was for landmine clearing. Then I did Dancing on Ice. And the only reason I did Dancing on Ice was because they said it's not possible to ice skate with one leg. So I Googled who's the best ice skater, and I found this Australian woman with one leg who'd been the gold two-legged champion before she lost her leg. So I thought, she'll know what to do. So I contacted her, and she said, no, it's not possible. She said, I said, you were a gold medalist with 2 legs. Of course you can just, I've never skated. She was like, no, it's not possible. So I developed a leg, and then went on to do Dancing on Ice. And now she's ice skating again, not competitively, but it just shows you. So the seas are being destroyed every day. People think omega-3 comes from fish, and it doesn't, especially not in the UK. Most of it's being farmed. But it comes from the algae the fish eat. So I said, why aren't we just having a capsule of algae instead of a capsule of fish oil? And people went, oh yeah, I could do that. I said, I'm not asking you to give up your fish. I'm just saying, think what capsule you're having. Use the original. DHA, omega-3, eicosapentaenoic acid. Think what you're eating. Read what's on the label. We have 3 of the largest factories in plant-based here in the Northeast. And I speak to vegans, and they're buying everything from America and Europe. And I'm like, you live here. Do you not even know that the products are actually here? So I know people are busy. I know it's about price point. But the bottom line is you end up creating a lot more expense in your health. And people say, oh, vegan food's expensive. But then you'll buy 10 packs of fags and go, it's bloody expensive. Oh, I can't eat that vegan food, it's so expensive. And you'll sit and have your cigarettes. So algal oil depletes CO2 by 2.5 tons every 1.5 tons that's grown. So we created the solution for the future of food will be algae, and you'll read more about it in the future. Final thing, I love farmers. Been brought up around farms very early on in my life. And instead of going, I did a speech at the EU for Brussels, and they were like, she's the Antichrist, she's the vegan. Oh my God. But afterwards I said to them, do you want a 17% EBITDA that is not relying on a subsidy from the government? And they were like, that's not possible. And I said, it is. So we've set up farming, fair trade farms all over Europe as test pilots, and actually farmers can actually make money. Subsidies are being removed from lots of countries around the EU, so promoting oats in the northeast, rapeseed growth, things that can actually help the community, help people's health, help the environment. Even if you don't go vegan, try and become a flexitarian and reduce what you're doing. I just want to say thank you so much. There's too many problems in the world to solve. It shouldn't just be down to a few of us. We're all responsible for it. If you've got kids, you're even more responsible. And thank you for your time. Thank you.